Okay, so welcome to this class. This is the initiate level of the witch archetype, and I'm really excited to have you here today, or if you're listening on the replay. So this is going to be a standalone workshop, and it will also function as pre-work, or you could think of it as like summer school for the Rose Temple Academy, which we begin classes for in September. So the early bird is open right now for Rose Temple, and I have 2 spots left of the founders rate. I'll be sharing more about that at the end of the class. And what we're speaking about today is the foundational work to really unblock and unlock the pieces that will be required to step into the work that we're going to be doing in September around the feminine archetypes, starting with the archetype of the witch. So this class is part of a 5-class series, which means I'm going to be doing 4 more classes inside of Coven over the course of the summer. So make sure you go and check in Coven for those. There'll be 1 class on each of the archetypes that I'm going to be teaching in the Rose Temple starting in September. So I also want to invite you that if this resonates with you, if you learn something from this class, feel free to share it with someone that you love, someone that you think might benefit, maybe a friend or a colleague or a family member, something like this. It's free for them to join Coven and have access to the class as the recording. So I invite you to share it with someone who you think might benefit from it. And I also want to share that this is a class, but it's also a transmission. And so the way that I really believe that the feminine works and processes information and change and transformation is somatic and embodied. So I encourage you to treat this transmission like a ritual and really allow yourself to be reprogrammed by what I'm sharing with you in this call. And you can take notes, or you might just want to simply absorb and let this shift you on a cellular level and trust that that shift is taking place through the process of receiving. It is highly likely that because this is a transmission, you're going to experience some kind of an internal or external shift in your life in the coming days or weeks following this call. So I just want to let you know that as you start to reprogram and really realign what we're going to be talking about today, you might start to experience your system realigning, and that can happen and show up through shifts and transformation that occurs through your life or internally after the call. So just trust that your system is realigning, trust that the work is happening just through you choosing to be here and being receptive to receiving this information. There will be a replay uploaded to Coven, and it will also be uploaded to the pre-work section in the back end of the Rose Temple. So I think that's everything that I need to cover in terms of logistics and setting the container. I mentioned this before we started recording, but I'm recovering from bronchitis, so I might cough a little bit. It's my own, I've been going through my own initiation of really this witch wound archetype, which is a lot around our voice, our expression, and being seen in our expression as powerful spiritual women. And so I'm going through my own throat chakra realignment as I'm in the process of teaching this work, which is something that happens to all of us who are here on a spiritual mission, here to share some kind of like our authentic gifts. Usually our work initiates us as well as we teach it. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Today's class is all about the witch wound. And of course, all of us, if you're here, we know what this is, right? We've definitely heard about it. We've talked about it. We've maybe even done some work on healing this. But I really want to dig into some deeper layers today, and some layers that maybe we might not have considered. And I think that's something that I love about working with this archetype of the witch and working with the witch wound, is that there are always deeper layers that we can get to and that we can uncover. Basically because we have thousands of years of conditioning to blast through. And most of us are doing this as the first woman in our lineage to be doing this work. So it's definitely not like a one and done. There's always deeper layers that we can get to and we can unravel. And even me, as I teach this, I always have deeper layers that I can get to and unravel, right? So we know the history of the witch wound. We know the history of what happened with the witch hunts. We know that tens of thousands of women, if not more, were murdered for existing, for being themselves, and for authentically expressing their feminine power. And these witches that were killed, they were not practicing dark magic as we've been told, or maybe we've even been sold this as propaganda through the archetypes of witches that we've seen in movies and in television and things like this, of the witch as this ugly old hag with warts who like eats small children, right? These were not the witches who were burned. The witches who were burned were women. They were just powerful women who were connected to nature. They were connected to their cycles. They were connected to herbal medicine. They were connected to astrology. They were connected to their intuition, to their sexuality, and most importantly, they were sovereign women. And sovereign women were dangerous to the patriarchy, and so they were wiped out. And we've heard about this witch wound as this like fear of being seen, maybe the fear of speaking up. You know, we might have thought about it as sort of the ways in which we hide in the spiritual closet, like we don't express our spiritual gifts into the world. And maybe we fear stepping into our full magic and our power. But it's really so much more than this. So we're going to talk about all the ways that it shows up. So how does the witch wound show up? The witch wound shows up in all of the places we give our power away. We fear our own power, or we hide from our power. And I'm going to talk about some really insidious ways and spells that have been cast upon us that I really believe that we're collectively reprogramming right now. The witch wound shows up in the ways that we hide our authentic expression. So this isn't just like, oh, I don't talk about the fact that I'm spiritual, or I don't talk about energy with other people, but it's any way that we hide our authentic self and we don't allow people to see us in our authentic embodied expression. The witch wound is any of the ways that we self-sabotage, any of the ways that we have practices of like avoidance, escapism, and things like addiction and numbing, ways that we subtly hide from our own power and we almost sabotage ourselves from being expressed in our full power, because we've been conditioned that it's easier to hide, it's easier to numb, it's easier to avoid being seen in our full light. The witch wound shows up in our feeling of disconnection from other women and our trust wounds with other women, the fear or the programming that we need to be in competition with other women. Something that a lot of people don't know is that during the witch hunts, women were told that if they sold out other women, if they gave up names of women who were witches, they would be protected. So this pitted women against each other. And that, like, I'm going to talk more about this, but these experiences live in our body. They're like somatic fear and experiences that we're viscerally holding on to. So feeling disconnected from other women, feeling trust wounds with other women, this is a big way that the witch wound shows up. Another one is fawning, people pleasing, and good girl energy. And, you know, this is one of the ways that we may have learned that we could protect ourselves from persecution or exile, is by fawning, is by being adaptable, being what people wanted us to be, being who people needed us to be. Okay. Fear of being outcast, fear of exile, and belonging wounds. So this is like that experience that I'm sure all of us who are on this call, all of us who are in the Coven community can relate to, this feeling of feeling like an outcast, feeling like I'm different. Even if we have spiritual community, We can often even feel exile or feel a sense of not fully belonging within our own community. And, you know, one of the sneaky lies around this is that we actually are all unique. We actually all are very different and have very unique, authentic expression. And we have this internalized fear of like, if I'm different, I'm going to be exiled, I'm going to be outcast, I'm not going to be safe. And so many of these witch wound fears come down to the fear of death and the fear of not being safe. And we're going to talk more about that. Another way that the witch wound shows up is overfunctioning in our masculine energy, or a mistrust of intuition, or a mistrust of magic, or things that are unproven. Like when we find ourselves getting into that over logic, over rational sort of way of thinking, like everything has to be proven by science or like by this very rational linear model. This is one of the ways that the witch wound can show up internally, intrinsically. The witch wound can show up in our denial of our authentic birthright gifts as women, or the ways that we've internalized capitalism and the patriarchy. So things like achievement-based value, or finding our value through productivity, thinking that we have to be on this perpetual hamster wheel, right? This hustle culture. These are all ways that the witch wound has been internalized. A fear of nature. This is a huge one. And I'm actually going to kind of put a pin in this one because the next free class that I'm going to be teaching in Coven is on the medicine woman. So when I teach that class, we're going to go much deeper into this one. But there's so much conditioning to be afraid of nature. And this is one of the ways that we've been disconnected from our authentic feminine essence. Feminine beings are naturally connected to nature, and we actually find our connection to spirituality through nature. And this is one of the ways that the witch wound can show up. Shame around being authentically expressed. So we talked a little bit about this, but any of the ways that we feel shame in just being our authentic self and being seen, being recognized, being celebrated in our authentic self. Another one of the ways that the witch wound shows up is sexual shame. And we're going to talk a lot more about this one. I'm also going to put a pin in this one because we're going to talk a lot more about this one when we do the 5th class in Coven. So I'm going to be doing the 5th free class that I'm going to be doing is on the priestess archetype. And we're going to be talking about sexual shame when we dive into that one. Throat chakra blocks. So we spoke about this. I'm having a throat chakra clearing. I'm actually healing from bronchitis right now. So anything around your voice, being able to speak your needs, being able to speak your truth, being seen in your voice, public speaking, lying, using your words to manipulate, or lying to yourself. Any of these throat chakra clearings, this is witch wound stuff. Fear of being seen as spiritual, being seen as magical, being seen as feminine. People are going to think you're crazy. People are going to think you're woo-woo. People are going to think you're not grounded in reality, right? These are all witch wound expressions. And feeling unsafe to be your authentic self. So the safety theme is a core sort of root of a lot of these. So in order for me to teach the archetype of the witch and help you embody and embrace her in your life, we need to look at and unlock some of these witch wounds. And in order to do this, the first step is for us to understand that these wounds aren't logical, right? We can logically understand that it's safe. We're not being killed anymore for being witches. We can have that logical understanding in our mind, but these wounds are not, it's not in the mind so much, it's in the body. It's literally in our nervous system, and it's somatically entrained into our bodies. They're generational wounds. These can be past life wounds, right? These can be truly things that like a persecution that we have experienced in past life, or persecution or ways of hiding that has been generationally passed down. And especially as women, something very important to remember is that through our matrilineal line, we existed as an egg in our grandmother's womb. So we have, like, our bodies hold that cellular memory of any of the ways that our grandmothers were experiencing any type of persecution or any type of like need to hide. And we're going to talk about some of the ways that this shows up. And so the ways that these witch wounds show up and the ways that we experience them is visceral. It's like a visceral felt sense in the body. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples so that you can understand what I really mean by this. One example is this was an experience that I had. So I was watching a TV show. I was watching the show Outlander. It's one of my favorite shows. And there's a scene in that show where this woman she's a herbalist, and she's in this cottage, and these men come with like lanterns, and they're like, take the witches. And they like fully like grab these women and like throw them into a cell. When I watched that scene, my body had a visceral response. Like my body responded as if I was being attacked. It was like my heart started racing. I started sweating. I started feeling visceral fear in my body. And it was a moment when I recognized and knew, this is something that I've known for a very long time, but it was a moment that I recognized and knew, like, what is happening on the screen, what I'm watching happen in this show is something that I have personally experienced in a past life. Like I've been killed in this way, and my body is reacting to that fear as if it's happening right now. It's like a visceral response. Another example of this is I was a part of a multi-author book a couple of years ago. And so I shared my story, and that was like a big, way that I was using my voice. I was sharing my story in a very public format. And when that book came out, when it was published, I experienced like this major contraction around my throat chakra. I was experiencing somatically, I went into a somatic process around it. And what I felt was like, I felt myself being hanged. And it was like, I was experiencing the fear of being seen, being recognized, sharing my voice, sharing my medicine, sharing my spiritual gifts, and being persecuted for that. Another example is that recently I've had the idea to I live in a house in Toronto, and I see clients in person. And I was like, oh, I should put a sign up in front of my house, like, Rewild the Soul, this is my business. And every time that I've gone to the website to order the sign, my body has this visceral response of shutdown where I want to get off the webpage. I start feeling really anxious. And of course, my body is having this response because I'm putting a sign up on my house saying the witch lives here. Like, this is something that I've been killed for, right? And so it's like these very subtle ways. Like, I'm someone who's very outspoken about being a witch. It's like right there in my Instagram bio, like I have a whole website on the internet saying like, hi, I'm a professional witch. This is what I do for my career. But there's still these subtle ways that as I step into being more visible, this witch wound shows up, and this fear, this visceral fear, which is like a somatic experience, my body starts responding to it, can still show up. So because this is a visceral experience, because it's an embodied experience, we need embodiment to move these witch wounds. We need embodiment to heal these witch wounds. And this is a combination of two things. One is doing somatic practices, which help you to move that energy through the body. And this is something that I'm going to be teaching in the Rose Temple. Everything from, there's going to be a whole library of practices, everything from how to protect your energy field daily, how to create a bubble of protection around your energy field, how to clear unwanted or stuck energy from your field, how to move these witch wounds through your system physically in the moment when that trigger comes up. And then the second part is of embodiment is actually taking action in the real world. So this looks like me not just like in the example of putting a sign in front of my house, like I'm not going to just not do that because every time I think to do it, I feel this anxiety, right? I'm going to move through somatic practice around processing that anxiety and moving it through my body. And then I'm going to go on the website and I'm going to order the sign and I'm going to put it up in my house. And I'm going to retrain new cellular memory that this is safe, that I'm safe to do this. And this has come up for me at many, many levels through my work, because this is what I do as a profession. It's something very public for me. When I first put it on Instagram, like I am a witch, I had to move through that somatically. I had to process that through my body, but then I had to go ahead and take the action step. So I think this is very important to speak to, is that embodiment is twofold. One fold is like doing the somatic practice to move the energy through your body. The second fold is actually taking action in the real world. And taking that action is when we start to see the change and create a memory in our nervous system, in our body, in our lineage, that it's safe now. Because all of these wounds are connected to a lack of safety, like literally being murdered, right? Either being murdered or being exiled. Those are like the two options. So pretty unsafe, basically. Like, yeah, we can't exist in isolation. We need community. So it also does help us to really understand where these wounds are playing out, because they can be very sneaky and very subtle, and they can be operating in the subconscious. So as we start to bring awareness to them, we can break the spell. We can break the spell that these have over us, and we can choose, okay, like now that I know that I'm not just procrastinating on putting the sign up in front of my house, now that once I realized like, oh, that's a witch wound playing out, I'm like, okay, I can do something about that. I'm going to actively move through that. I'm going to intentionally move through that. If I was not aware that was why, like that there's a witch wound aspect there of me putting a sign on my house saying the witch lives here, then I might just keep avoiding it and keep procrastinating, right? Okay, so I want to speak about breaking spells. So some of the most harmful spells that have been cast on women are still part of our collective conditioning today. And these are sort of like, when I say spells, what I really mean is that words are spells. And this is something that I'm going to be teaching in Rose Temple, is how to use your words with intention and how to cast spells with your words, because words are very powerful. We are using our throat to evoke something into being through our words. And we receive so much programming through the things that we hear and the things that we listen to, whether it's through music, media, the news, social media. There's all of these ways that we're being programmed and that we're being conditioned. And these are ways that the collective is casting spells on us. And so I'm going to go into some of the spells that are important to break for us to step into accessing our full feminine power and step out of these witch wounds. So the first one that we're going to talk about is around men and relationships. So one of the greatest spells that has been cast on women is the lie that we need to chase men and male validation in order to be worthy, safe, or loved. And this is not just a spell. This was actually something that was legally sort of like indoctrinated upon us. Like women were, up until we are likely, everyone here on this call is likely the first generation of women in her lineage who is not financially required to partner with a man in order to survive. Okay, like that's huge. Women weren't allowed to have their own bank accounts. Women weren't allowed to have their own money until like very, very recently, like 50 years ago. And so this doesn't mean that we need to fear men, that we need to vilify men, or that it's wrong to want to have love relationships with men. But it's important to understand the spell casting that has been done through movies, through Disney, through every single song that we listen to, through every single piece of media that we consume is telling us that the most important thing for a woman is to find a man and to get that man to choose her, for her to be valued, for her to be able to live, right? And even if it's not a financial requirement anymore, we still have this conditioning that our existence as women is dependent on our relation with men. You know, I don't know if you've heard the statistic about how it's pretty much non-existent in a movie to have two female characters having a conversation that isn't a conversation revolving around a male character. And that's insane, right? We're being conditioned through that, which we don't even notice, to think that our only job is to talk about men or to be a boy crazy obsessed with like lovesick puppies chasing this validation and security from finding a man to choose us. And one of the ways that this takes us away from our innate power as women is that it sucks up all of our life force energy. It takes up so much of our time and our resources and our energy to be in this perpetual obsession with talking about relationships, with talking about men, with thinking about men, with thinking about how to please men and how to receive male validation. This is what we've been conditioned is the most important thing for us to do as women. And it's the biggest distraction that I see every single woman, even the most empowered women that I know, even myself, I have fallen for this, obsessing over needing this validation from men, over relationship problems with men. And so it's the biggest and easiest way to distract women from their spiritual power is to convince them that they exist to please men and to create the societal conditions that require them to lock down a man in order to be safe, right? This is like all of our female ancestors were under these conditions, every single one. And so it's something that's still very, very deeply programmed into us. And it just siphons so much of our life force energy from our creation, like from our creation of something that actually is for us to do something with our spiritual power, with our Shakti energy, with our life force energy to create something in the world that is actually of value. And it's just designed to siphon feminine energy from being connected to our spiritual power. So how do we heal this piece? We heal this by reclaiming our energy from the spell, by reclaiming our belief that our power comes from being chosen by a man, by choosing ourselves, by becoming sexually sovereign, which is something that I'm going to be teaching in the priestess archetype, by decentering men, which doesn't mean that we don't have relationships with men. It just means that our entire life is not based around relationships with men. And by creating reciprocal relationships that uplift both partners and the vision and dreams and creation of both partners. Because another way that this sneaky one plays out is the conditioning that women's role in a marriage or in a relationship is to put her energy towards the man's mission, the man's work, the man's dreams in the world. And this is something that I even see in like modern day polarity teachings. People are teaching this. This is crazy, right? We hear this all the time. Behind every great man is a great woman. What that means is that that woman's life force energy, she is pouring that energy into the man so that he can be successful and seen in the world in his gifts, in his mission. And that is conditioned into us, is that is our role, to be siphoned in that way and to choose that willingly and to sacrifice ourselves in that way. And statistically, we know that women who are married have a lower lifespan, have and across every single measure of well-being, our well-being decreases. Men's lifespan increases, and across every measure of well-being, their statistics increase. And that is because women are conditioned to pour their life force energy into a man. This doesn't mean that we have to make it wrong to partner with men, but there's a different way to be in partnership that's reciprocal, where both people's gifts, and specifically the feminine spiritual gifts, are honored and revered and celebrated and uplifted as much as the man's mission and the man's gifts. So this is one of the ways that we can start to decondition this witch wound programming that's getting us stuck in just giving our power away. The second one, which is connected, is aging and beauty. So this is a spell that has been cast on women, that our value is based in our physical appearance, and that our physical appearance declines as we age, and so therefore our value declines as we age. We are told the opposite is true about men. We are told that men's value increases as they age, and we are told that women's value decreases as they age. We are told that men leave women to get a new model, an upgrade. We are told that women expire at a certain age. And all of this is based on the belief that women's power and her value lies in her physical appearance, her physical attributes. And this is a spell. This is a spell that the beauty industry is casting on us. This is a spell that the patriarchy is casting on us. Like, this is deep. We are being indoctrinated with this spell constantly. Botox, being told that we shouldn't have a frown line here because women are supposed to be happy all the time. Women aren't supposed to be angry. We have a frown line because we frown because things are wrong, because there's things to be angry about, because there's things really fucked up in the world, and we should be angry about them, and we should have a voice about those things. But we're not taught that. We're taught that we should have just a perfectly flat, no wrinkles, all smiles. And the truth is actually that women's true power is our greatest asset is our spiritual gifts and our intuition and our spiritual sight, our connection to the unseen, and our role as an oracle and connection to all of life, and our role in community. And these gifts only increase with age. In fact, these gifts reach their peak when we enter our crone era, which is when we finish perimenopause and we move into menopause, when we're no longer fertile and all of our energy moves into our own body, and our spiritual energy is even more concentrated, and we become wise women. This is when we're actually most valuable. And society teaches us that women who are in this age bracket, women who are crones, are invisible, that they don't matter, and that they need to disappear. And it's absolutely fucking bullshit. And we need to really understand that this is one of the ways that the witch wound has been indoctrinated into us. We need to reclaim where our true value lies, which is not in our physical appearance, but is in our intrinsic, our spirit, like our spirit and our soul. This is our true value. And these are things that become stronger as we get older. These are things that we gain wisdom, we gain experience, we gain life experience, and therefore we become stronger in these gifts. And so, of course, the patriarchy has discarded the aspects of the feminine that are not useful to them, which is the virgin maiden, which can fulfill a sexual role, for the patriarchy, or the fertile mother, which can fulfill a role of bearing children for the patriarchy. These are the only two aspects of the feminine that bear use to the patriarchy, and therefore the only two aspects of the feminine that we are taught to embody. Being a sexual object for men, or leaving the legacy for the father's line, right? These are the two ways that we're taught we have value as women. And this entire beauty industry is being sold to us in order to be attractive to men. Reference the first spell, right? It's all connected. To stay forever youthful, which actually cuts us off from our deepest and most essential power, which comes through our age, which comes through our wisdom that we gain as we age. So when women are, and this is the other part, is that when women are connected to our spiritual power, our life force energy, our kundalini energy, our spiritual energy, when we strengthen and embody that channel, we actually, not only do we become more wise, more embodied, and we have more spiritual value, we actually become more radiant as we age. We actually become more beautiful as we age. Even though we get wrinkles and we get frown lines, we actually become more radiant and more beautiful. And witches were never ugly old hags, right? In the forest, they were actually sovereign women with ageless and timeless beauty. There's like, witches didn't age because they're connected to their sexual power and their sovereignty and their energy, and they're cycling their own life force energy. They become more beautiful and more radiant as they get older. This is a threat to the patriarchal system. These women are a threat. So they killed them all. And so how do we heal this? We heal this by reclaiming our natural beauty and aging gracefully and naturally. We heal this by reclaiming our value in our spiritual power. We heal this by reclaiming the power of the crone and rewriting the societal lies that women become invisible and valueless as they get older, when what we actually need and what we're actually missing most from society is the wise woman archetype. We're missing the woman who is the oracle, who has spiritual vision, and who can provide insight to guide the direction and leadership of where we're going, right? Like, it's a fucking mess in our leadership because we don't have this. We don't have wise woman energy in leadership, which is like, if we go back to ancient times, there was always this referral to the wise woman archetype, the oracle archetype, to receive spiritual wisdom in order to guide the direction of leadership. I'm getting fired up. Okay, the third spell that we've been cast is that women aren't meant to work or be financially sovereign. And this one I was not going to talk about. And then I was like, no, you know what? We have to talk about this one. So this spell is making a huge comeback lately, which is crazy. And it's being dangerously associated with women being in their feminine energy. And I just want to say this right now, there is nothing feminine about being helpless and dependent. There's nothing feminine about that. Okay? So if anyone is telling you that in order to be feminine, you need to rely on a man to provide for you financially, that is just not true. That is infantilizing women and playing on maiden wounds and basically teaching women to go back into a little child, because the only person who should be financially dependent on another adult is a child, not a grown person. And so witches were financially sovereign. They were the only women who were financially sovereign because they had gifts, they had services, they had clients, the community supported them, right? They were cared for by the community, and they did not require a man to be financially sovereign. And this is why men feared them. they fell out of the traditional structure of requiring men for financial freedom. And so they were not required financially to partner with men in order to survive. So the lie that women need to be financially dependent on men to be feminine is the modern expression of this spell casting. And in the past, we were told that women were too emotional, too hormonal, too hysterical, too stupid to function in careers and handle money, right? This is not true. And it's also not true that in order to be in your feminine energy, you have to just sit and not work, right? When you look at what women do naturally, when they come into a space or when they gather, when they get together, they start doing things. They start helping. They start seeing what needs to be done. Women are very productive beings naturally. Our natural state, yes, of course, we want to frolic and we want to lay in the grass and we want to receive, and those things are beautiful. But our natural state is not just to be helpless and dependent. Our natural state is to be of service, actually. Our natural state is to be of service. And so the foundation of the witch archetype is that she is sovereign as a woman. And yeah, one of the other ways that this is perpetuated in the modern day is telling women that men will be intimidated by us if we make our own money, that we can't find a good man if we make our own money, because this is witch hunt propaganda. Refer to spell 1. And so one of the ways that this plays out is in hiding our spiritual gifts, our service, and our work from the world, or even from our own family, not being of service in the way that is so natural and intrinsic to the feminine. Women are naturally wise, intelligent, capable, intuitive, and we are naturally of service to our communities. And we have been conditioned to pour our life force into men and to their mission and their visions, instead of to be financially sovereign through our spiritual gifts. So how do we heal this? We heal this through healing our relationship to money, to discipline, to work, and reframing work from the patriarchal structures of hustle and overworking into work is really just being of service to your community and to the world. That's what true work is. And we get to reframe that. And we get to also create the structures to be paid and financially supported by our natural gifts as women. Okay, I think I need to plug in my computer. I don't want my computer to die. That would be bad. Okay, the fourth spell is the spell of perpetual linear growth and productivity. So, of course, we've been taught that everything is in this one-way directional, like it's a graph, and it's just going like up, 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 up. And that's not how anything in life or nature actually works. Everything in life and in nature is cyclical. And our culture has vilified the death aspect of all cycles. So this is the winter time in the seasons. This is our bleed in our menstrual cycle. This is the crone era in the cycle of our lifetime. These are all emanations of the dark goddess and the dark feminine. And our calendar structure is literally designed to disconnect us from these cycles in many, many, many ways. So, for example, the weeks that we go on, we start our work week on a Monday, and the weeks are actually, each day of the week is aligned with a planet. There are planetary associations with each day of the week. Monday is Moon Day. And Moon Day is when we feel most connected to our emotions and we feel most internal. This is why it's a really bad day to start work. And most people are really depressed. They have to go to work on Monday because we're more emotional, we're more internal. We want to stay home. We want to be cozy. We want to tend to our inner world. It's like a day for self-care and emotional regulation. And we're taught to wake up and go to the office. What would make sense is starting the work week on Mars Day, where we have a lot of drive and we want to get shit done, right? But they want to disconnect us from these natural rhythms. We have cycles of months, 12 months instead of moon cycles, which there should be 13 of in a year. There are 13 moon cycles in a year, but we have 12 months. So it's kind of like just off enough where we're disconnected from those natural rhythms of the moon cycles. The new year starts in the depths of winter in January, when we're in the most yin time of year. We're in the death cycle. It is not a rebirth cycle in January. It is death. We are letting everything decay. The year actually begins at the spring equinox, when the astrological cycle begins with Aries, when we have fire, vim, and vigor to begin the new cycle. So all of these ways that we've been disconnected from the natural cycles through the calendar structure, through the foundations of the structure of how our society functions. And the yin aspects, the feminine aspects of all of these cycles is when the energy moves inward versus outward. We are taught to fear and mistrust and demonize these aspects of any cycle. So even this goes down to like very subtle layers, like me getting sick this week, is like getting sick is a yin cycle. Getting sick is an invitation to go inward. It's like rest, stay in bed, reflect. There's a shift happening below the surface. That's what the yin part of the cycle is. It's like in the wintertime, everything looks dead in the forest. Things are happening underground, percolating, brewing, dying, and transforming so that a new birth can come. And we are taught to distrust this yin aspect, like, oh, I can't get sick, I can't rest, I can't stay in bed too long because I might never get out. And it's like, when we actually lean into those cycles, and when I rest, when I'm sick, when I stay home and I go inward, I receive so much internal shifting on a cellular level. One, I allow my body to go through a fever. I had a fever. And you know what we're taught to do? We're taught to take medicines. This is going to be the whole medicine woman. I'm not going to get into this, but we're taught to suppress those symptoms instead of allowing our body to take its natural course. A fever is a rebirth of many of the cells in your body. A fever is your body heating up so that a bunch of your cells can die so that you can make a bunch of new cells. It's a physical rebirth happening on a cellular level in your body when you get a fever. And when we allow that reprogramming to happen, when we allow that shift to take place, that death, the rebirth comes and there is a new bloom and a new harvest. There's something to create out of that death. But when we resist the death, we try to go up, 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 only up, 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 never stop, never stop. This is one of the spells that has been cast on us to disconnect us from this witch archetype. So how do we heal this? We heal this by reclaiming cyclical living in every aspect of our life, surrendering to the death cycles and allowing them to clear and cleanse you for the rebirth, allowing life to reorient you and to teach you something in these death cycles, and trusting the medicine of the descent, trusting that the descent leads to the next ascent. Okay, so these are some of the spells that are being cast externally that we've also internalized of how this witch wound plays out in our lives. And now I want to talk about some of the internalized ways that the witch wound plays out. So the first one is the sister wound. And we talked a little bit about this. This is mistrust of other women, the conditioning to be in competition with other women. And this comes back to the spell about men, that our role is to just find a man to choose us. And so that we have to be in competition with one another. And, this kind of thing can show up in really subtle ways. It might have even shown up in small ways for some of you in showing up for this call, right? Like, oh, who's going to be there? Is it going to be weird? Are they going to see my face? Like, what's going to happen? it can hold us back from being in community and sisterhood with other women. It can also show up in really subtle ways of like, yeah, I have a great sisterhood in my life. I have great community of women. And there are still subtle ways in which I pull back when I'm struggling or when I'm going through something hard, where I don't ask for support or I isolate myself, right? There's very subtle ways where the sister wound can be playing out. The truth, however, is that women's power is communal. And when we gather together, we actually generate energy. This is something that we actually create energy that did not exist when we come together and when we share and we collectively bring our energy together. And we spoke about how women were protected from the witch burnings by selling out other women. So this is, again, like one of those things that can be happening on a cellular level in a way that our conscious mind might not understand, right? It can be playing out in these very subtle ways that our conscious mind isn't even aware of. Another way that the witch wound is internalized is through distraction, avoidance, self-sabotage, and procrastination. These are the subtle ways that we keep ourselves just distant enough from fully claiming or being seen in our power. It's like the to-do list of household chores that always gets too long. Clarissa Pinkola Estes in Women Who Run with the Wolves talks about this. She talks about how a woman's work is never done. And if a woman waits until the work of maintaining the house is done to live her soul life, she will never live it, because there's always something to do. And if we allow ourselves to, be distracted and like, yeah, there's so many different ways that this can play out. There's so many ways, like the example of me and the printing of the sign could be one of them, right? Like, oh, every time I go to do that, I just procrastinate on it. It's just like these little ways that we hide, that we don't want to be seen, that we don't want to show up, that it's scary. And so we'd rather not. This can also show up through like ways that we numb or avoidance habits. So this can be like addictions. And I say addictions very loosely. This can be for sure substances and alcohol, but it can also be things like shopping, it can be social media, it can be addiction to our own suffering, it can be addiction to toxic relationships. That's a very good way to distract yourself forever and never step into your power. It can be addiction to drama. That's another great way to just siphon all of your energy and never have time to step into your gifts because you're just too distracted by the drama. The victim thing, like the victim complex, that's a good one. That one, we can stay there, we can spiral there, we can let that eat up all of our life force and never be in our power and create what we're here to create. So, we have to be honest with ourselves and really, really get honest with ourselves and think about what these might be for us. We likely already know ways that we're numbing, ways that we're distracting, ways that we're avoiding stepping into really being in our power. And what would happen if we didn't have all of those distractions? What time would be freed up? What energy would be freed up? And then what would that really require us to do, right? What would that ask of us? It would ask us to become our most powerful selves. And that really scares us often. The other internalized way is with the people pleasing and the good girl. So fawning is a witch wound. It's one of the ways that we learn to stay safe from persecution and exile, right? Make them like us, maintain belonging, do what others want us to do, or be who others want us to be, being good, being likable to fit in and to stay safe from persecution. This was a survival strategy for our ancestors and possibly for us in past lives and maybe even in this life. But it's one of the ways that we dim our light and where we avoid showing up in our full power. We're coming back to this one, but giving our life force away to men, and especially through our sexual energy. And we're going to come back to this in the priestess class. We're going to talk more about this because we're going to keep that to the priestess archetype, all of the work around the sexual energy. But this is a really big way that we can allow our life force to be siphoned. And staying stuck in repeating the same cycles. So addiction to healing, but we're really just looping and repeating lessons like over and over and over again. Yeah, you have a question? Yeah, go for it.
Yes. No, I found that the sexual energy one is appealing. I know you want to keep it for later, but like, can you just explain in what way, like briefly?
Yeah, so I
Like,
mean, any time that we're giving our sexual energy, so our sexual energy is our life force energy. Um, and it is what allows us to be creative. It is what we create things with our sexual energy. And when we give that away in containers where it's not, a safe and like reciprocal container where there's many, again, we'll go into this in the priestess, but anytime that we're giving that energy away loosely, it is we're basically draining our life force.
no, I'm glad you say this because for a long time I felt I've been holding this energy, and then I am accused of not being wild or oppressed or
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it's
Yeah.
always interesting how much men are wanting to negotiate with you
Yeah.
to let go. And none of them is on my terms, and they want me to let go. I was like, why don't you give up what you're doing? Like your
Right.
glamorous behavior, for not judging, but like it's not for me.
Yeah.
Or you say you want casual, like why can't you give up your own values?
Right.
Um, but I mean, that's why I'm like, this really caught my attention because I'm
Yeah.
torn between, okay, I do have desires too,
Yes.
and
Totally. Yeah.
I
I
I
think
don't want to deny it, but how do
totally.
we deal with it as witches?
Yeah. I'm gonna do a whole class on this in the priestess
Okay.
archetype. But what I will say for now is that I think it's one of the biggest lies that we've been taught as women is that our liberation is giving away our sexual energy freely. That's not actually liberating for us. That's just a way for us to drain our life force energy, and to be siphoned our life force energy. And we don't benefit from leaking our sexual energy in a container that's leaky. Like that doesn't benefit us. Um, it doesn't benefit us spiritually, it doesn't benefit us sexually. Like there's no benefit to us, and our spiritual energy is our sexual energy. Like there's not a separation there. um so yeah, that's what I will say on that for now. But stay tuned, come to the priestess call because we're going to talk all about it. That's going to be like the whole call. um yeah, so but that is a big way that we are giving our power away. And as women, our wombs are it's a force of creation. So whatever energy comes in there is going to be amplified. And if we are letting all kinds of different men's energy into there, then that energy is being siphoned in a lot of different directions instead of being concentrated and channeled into our own creative pursuits. Um, Okay, the last one is staying stuck and repeating the same cycles. So the addiction to healing, like we think that we're like doing something, but we're really just looping and repeating lessons, and we're not actually changing anything, right? We might be like reading all the books, but we're not actually taking action. This is why for each of these, I'm giving like actionable steps to change your behavior in your real life, because embodiment is not just about dancing and doing somatic practices. Embodiment is about who we are being as we move through the world. It's about our action as we move through the world, the things that we do every single day, how we show up in everyday life. So, because it's so painful to be disconnected from our authentic truth, this is why we numb, we distract, we avoid, we self-sabotage. We have all these internalized ways that this witch wound shows up, because it allows us to avoid facing the ways that we hide from our own power, which is what we've been conditioned to do. And we've learned that we had to do that in order to be safe. And so then there's all this numbing and sort of like ways that we have to just deny that we're doing that, because it's a really painful experience to suppress our authentic expression. So what transformation? Yeah, you have a question? Nadia, you want to unmute yourself?
You mentioned like actionable steps towards like embodiment. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I'm getting embodiment feels heavy, like whole, like complete embodiment because the wound is still like, you know, present. And so like as I'm walking through my life, like I see when aspects of a lot of what you're talking about are activated, and sometimes I'll lean into numbing or I'll lean into something that I wish I wouldn't have done. And then I find I I drop out of that embodiment.
Yeah.
Does that mean I'm not embodied and that I'm not like, because I'll start to feel like I'm not that woman, and then it just leads to like more procrastination and stuff. Can you like give some examples of practices to help you out of that?
Yeah, totally. So this is a great question. And for me, I think embodiment is a practice. And
Hmm.
what a practice means is that we are practicing. We're
Hmm.
not perfectly performing, right? We're
Hmm.
practicing. So we're going to make mistakes and we're going to keep going and we're going to keep practicing.
Hmm.
And so one of the ways that I move through this is essentially like anytime any of these wounds are showing up, I would say it's a twofold process. One is being with what's showing up. So
Hmm.
this for me, it typically looks like some kind of a somatic practice. It's
Hmm.
working with the breath, working with the body, working with some kind of expression to be with what's there. So there's like resistance there to putting a sign up in front of my house, for example. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
I go and be with that sensation and let that sensation move through my body. And then
Hmm.
the second piece is following through. So
Hmm.
going and getting the sign printed and putting it up,
Hmm.
and feeling the resistance in my, because yeah, there's resistance coming up when I go to the website to order it. Um, and it's probably going to come up again when I go to hang the sign. And
Hmm.
I notice that, feel that in my body, be present with that, but also move with it and move through it. So like
Hmm.
resistance is present, but I'm not doing the thing. Uh,
Hmm.
and I would apply that process to like pretty much any of these. So
Yeah.
doing some kind of a somatic practice. And what I will say for those of you who are enrolled in Rose Temple, or if you're interested in enrolling in Rose Temple, there's going to be a guided practice specifically for witch wound. So a
Hmm.
somatic practice for like when this comes up in the moment, like, oh, I'm printing a sign for my house and I'm noticing this resistance.
Hmm.
Put in your headphones, listen to the practice. It's going to be a somatic practice to help you move that energy through your body. And then the second piece is like going and taking the actionable step.
Hmm.
Awareness
That
has
makes,
to be there first, if that makes sense.
yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you so much.
Awesome. You're so welcome. Um, okay, so I want to talk about what transformation embodying the witch offers us. So, when we embody the archetype of the witch, we begin to see this invisible thread of connection that weaves everything in life together. And this is one of the reasons why the spider is connected to the archetype of the witch, because the spider weaves the invisible threads and helps these like pieces that connect in the unseen realms. This has been showing up a lot for me since I've been sick. And I was thinking about like, oh, this is the witch archetype. The witch archetype is like, I got sick. I'm not just like, oh, I'm sick. I'm like, I'm seeing how this sickness is reprogramming me. I'm seeing how it's connected to the wounds of my ancestors. I'm seeing how I started wearing this necklace that belonged to my grandmother. I'm seeing how she had to hide her authentic expression in order to be safe in her life. I'm seeing how that's like how I'm reprogramming that. Like I'm seeing all these invisible threads, what things that are happening in my community and how that's affecting me. Like I'm seeing all these invisible threads and weaving them together in order to understand the unseen realm of like, it's not just, I'm sick, there's so much more depth and nuance to what's happening all the time in our lives. And when we embody this witch archetype, we get to weave those elements together. We get to be able to see the magic and the medicine in everything that happens, and to weave intention and ritual and magic and spell and co-create reality with the goddess, rather than just feeling victim to what's happening. We cast new spells of possibility and potential. So as we heal these wounds, as we reclaim our power, we cast new spells of what's possible for the world and for our lives and for what we will create in the world. What we are capable of when we access our true power is absolutely limitless. And this is why we're so afraid of it. When we access this archetype, we no longer need to play small, to hide, to shrink, to avoid, to numb from the pain of disconnection. We become connected to our authentic selves, and we become connected to all of life, and we become connected to our communities. We begin to thrive in our connection to our families and to our communities, and through our role of the service that we have to offer to the world and to our communities. We begin to feel true belonging because we're authentically expressed as our authentic selves. We feel sovereign. We don't feel victimized by life anymore. We begin to choose relationships that are healthy and based in reciprocity and mutual benefit and service, not out of obligation or conditioning. We experience financial freedom and the fulfillment of sharing our authentic gifts with the world. We thrive in our service to the world. We heal our lineages. We access our innate feminine essence and radiance, and we feel empowered as we age. And we experience ourselves as intrinsically valuable and find our worth in our spiritual embodiment and in who we're being through life. And so we can no longer be controlled by indoctrination and societal programming of what it means to be a woman. So this is why the witch is the foundation of what I'm going to be teaching in Rose Temple, which is the year-long witch school that is starting in September, because the witch is the key. She is the foundation. She is the key to our sovereignty, and she is the key to reclaiming our power. And so I'd love to have you share in the chat one of the ways that the witch wound is currently showing up for you. And maybe if you feel so brave, an action plan to move through this way that the witch wound is showing up. Because as we were speaking about, taking aligned action is the fastest way to clear these wounds, because it lives in our tissues, it lives in our body. And so we have the twofold process of moving through a somatic practice to move the energy while or before or after we take the aligned action. And that can help us to not, like, if we're only taking the aligned action and we're not doing any kind of practice or any kind of somatic experience, we can just get really triggered, right? If we just force ourselves through it, we might just get more triggered. And so moving the energy through a somatic practice of some kind is really important, so that we can actually transform the experience of being in that aligned action of that new pathway into a positive one. this retrains our cellular memory and it retrains our neurology, because we know that we have neuroplasticity. We can change the function of our brain. So as I mentioned, there will be a recorded practice for somatically moving through witch wounds through the body that you can listen to anytime these feelings are coming up within the Rose Temple. There will be a library of other practices just for the witch archetype. So things like altar building, setting up personal containers and protection spells, clearing energy and clearing space, elemental attunement, so working with the elements, official circle casting, clearing, opening, and closing circles. And then there will be the somatic practice on working through the witch wound. So